Good morning. Happy Monday. Happy Memorial Day. And before we begin today's show, I just want to give a shout out to all of those who have served our country, all those who've lost their lives over all the years, because today is a special day just to remember them. And in conjunction with that, I think I've got the perfect guest for a Memorial Day show. So my guest today is Michael Mirdad. Michael is a spiritual teacher and an author. He's known as the teacher's teacher, and his work is just amazing. I've known Michael for many years. You can find out more about him on his website, which is www.michael.com. And he has a new book out. It's called The Book of Love and Forgiveness. And so that's what I think is just so appropriate that we talk about on Memorial Day. So welcome, Michael.
Hello, good to see you again.
It's great to see you too. And your book is amazing. And, and I really think that this is probably the most appropriate day that I could have had you on the show, because what calls out more for love and forgiveness than war, which is the antithesis of all of that. And that's sort of what we're honoring today. So how did you come to write this book, Michael?
Well, it's, part of I think a thread or string of inspirations that had come to me. I don't write books based on market like some people, which is really the way you do it if that's what you think about. For me, this was kind of a string of inspirations, just some ideas that had come to me, and I wrote a year or so ago, a book on the heart of A Course in Miracles, for example. And that was, kind of getting back to the heart of things, getting to the heart of the matter, getting to healing and so on a deeper level. And so this sort of, I think, was a branch of that same inspiration. So I thought, there's just, there are a lot of books that have come out on over all the years, on forgiveness or on something related, healing or forgiveness. And I found they just don't seem that effective. And I mean, anybody that writes or teaches on forgiveness, I mean, God bless them, because that's so beautiful and important. But it was just like, I hadn't seen anything that's done real simple, or if they're books, let's say, related to other materials, whether it's the Bible or A Course in Miracles, related to other materials about forgiveness, they just steer off further and further from the main point that they were trying to write about. So I thought, let's just call it The Book of, instead of calling it some other interesting, or in the publishing world what they call a sexy title, something catchy. I just thought, let's just keep it about that subject and get it done. Let's get to the point, and because people want to know, not read a 300 or 500 page book about forgiveness that might have a few ideas somewhere hidden in all the text. I thought, let's just get to it. What is it, and how to apply it. And people want to know, get to the point and tell us how it's done. And so I thought, let's just do it.
Yeah. And, I think the thing that most people tend to forget is they think that, okay, well, I know I'm supposed to forgive, blah, 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 but they don't understand that they're not doing it for that other person. The only person who really benefits in forgiveness is yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. Forgiveness is something I share with people as a process, not an event.
Right.
So because sometimes people have said, wow, I had this cathartic experience where I forgave somebody. And because it's worded like that, it's gotten to the point where people just now assume it's one of those things where all of a sudden it's done. It's a thing that is done. And it really isn't. It can happen, for some people, rarely it can happen as a moment, like a miraculous moment. But a lot of times when they think that's what happened, a miraculous moment, what really happened was a progression that they weren't aware of or not conscious of. And then it looks like it happened in one moment, but really there was some other, material or processing behind it. But yeah, a lot of folks just kind of, they take it in that direction and think it's an event, but it's really a process. And the sooner we get used to that idea, we would save ourselves a lot of misery and a lot of time, because we would realize it's, this it's instead of making these grandiose statements of, I have forgiven somebody, you know, like you're on the rooftop shouting it, you'll find that will only lead to frustration later when new levels or layers of that particular person or an issue rises again. Then I can't tell you, you know, in all my years of doing this, how many, you know, thousands of people over the years have said, you know, I thought I gave this person, you know, they're having a session with me. And so often, you know, old stuff comes up and memories of a person come up and then they cry and say, but I thought I forgave this person. And now they're judging themselves, you know, for thinking they haven't forgiven them. So I say, well, wait, you likely have forgiven them, but layers, you know. So, and I don't believe in the old onion analogy as much as some people, because when they say the onion analogy and say, well, there's layers and layers and it never ends. You don't affirm that it never ends. It does end. However, it is like the onion in that there are many layers, but you don't obsess on how to get rid of the layers. You just work them as they come up. If they don't come up, great. If they do, great. You know, learning to just stay in the moment with it, not obsess on it, nor deny it. You know, you just stay centered, and these things rise as they do. But you know, as you were saying, it's you know, people struggle with this, and forgiveness, though, is not a single event. It is a process, and folks are learning more and more how to actually achieve that sense of success with forgiveness. But you know, part of the process is, you know, to recognize what you were specifically saying about ourselves. To recognize the main point I make in the book is splitting forgiveness sort of into two halves, because not everybody's ready to jump right into responsibility. So what I say is, look, two halves. Let's talk about forgiveness about others, because it's where you start. Right. So if all I can do is right now barely get out of me how angry I am about someone, that's where I need to start. So we start with that concept of, tell me what happened, for example, you know, or a person telling themselves what happened or journaling what happened. Here's what I'm angry about. Wait, great. We start with that. And then there are exercises in here, a handful of exercises that are just perfect for whatever situation. So we start with, I'm mad about somebody, what they did to me. But it evolves to how I can learn about my own lessons in this. Right. But you do not have to go to that today. You don't have to even go there tomorrow. It's just know that one day you can go there. So for folks that can only talk about who has hurt them and needs to forgive those people, so be it. It's in there. Let's talk about it. Let's work it. Let's forgive as best you can those other people and be at greater peace. Then there's going to be a time for some readers or students on the path who are going to say, I want to know more about this forgiving self. I want to know more about that, you know. And so there's a point where they step into that, and it works very well for them because we can take it to another level.
Absolutely. And you know, it's an interesting concept when we think of the fact that we hire everybody to come to bring us our lessons, you know. So in a perfect world, there would be no need for forgiveness because we actually hired that person to do what they did for us so that we could master something we needed to master, you know. But it's hard to get to that point, isn't it?
Well, it's almost impossible. And by that, I don't mean to sound bleak. I'm just saying that takes a level of responsibility and understanding that a lot of people don't have. So like I said, they can start where they are and just practice forgiveness on that guttural level, that primal level. So if someone has lost a loved one in war or in any form of conflict, I mean, conflict, war is not the only conflict. So war is an example, but what about two people warring in a divorce? So there's anger, there's hatred, there's hurt, there's look what they've done to me, just like someone's taken my child in war or my husband or wife or whatever. So, we come from that place and say, okay, we need to practice forgiveness, but at that point, it's like, look what they've done to me. And we need to start there, with as healers and counselors, we need to say, I'm really sorry that's happened, and be compassionate and be with them in the pain right then, but our destiny is to have greater understanding. But until then, we as facilitators, it's our job, it's our responsibility to not overwhelm them with saying something like, oh, you've lost a loved one, or oh, your partner took everything in a divorce. Well, it's just an illusion, let it go. That's putting an expectation on them to understand something that's very deep and very difficult to wrap our mind around. So what we do is we can start with, I'm sorry that happened. I feel for you, and be with them in that level of love and compassion. You know, let them feel loved first, more than try to correct them. Right. Let's love them and let's be with them. So we want to make sure students on the path and listeners and viewers of shows like this, that they understand nobody's going to try to push them, you know, into it's an illusion and just forgive it. It's not like that. Folks can practice forgiveness at whatever the level they're at. But yes, there are deeper and deeper levels, and there is a point where people can say, how could I possibly say I hired someone to do some of the atrocities? I mean, can you imagine people on planet Earth saying, oh, well, that whole Hitler thing, let's just forget it because we just hired him to do that. People aren't going to take that very kindly to that. Right. Or other kinds of hurtful people, even in just individual situations, not global like that, national like that. But what we can do is learn, there's a way to bridge those conversations by saying, okay, I cannot imagine that I hired someone to do something horrible like this. It's just crazy. And I don't have those such thoughts in my mind, like genocide or serial killing or whatever else, hurtful things, or just people that use to the level some of our partners have used us. You know, we just go, it's not in my mind. How could I imagine that I hired someone? What you do is don't personalize it, and don't go into how could I. Like, if you put such a shame on it, you're not going to want to recognize right. any relation you have to it. So what we can do is say, all right, I'll do this. I can see that this happened. I'm clearly aware that this event took place, this hurtful experience happened, or that this person seems to have harmed me in some way. But I can also see that it brings up feelings in me like betrayal and rejection and so on that I have felt before, meaning this person isn't the first person that has brought up feelings like this for me. Betrayal, hurt, whatever it is. Not being seen, not being heard, made to feel less than, and so on. When I start to realize I have had these feelings before, I now have revealed a pattern. Well, wait, whose pattern? You know, I now see, oh my God, you might have done such and such to me, but this isn't the first time I felt this way. And it's now, I go, this is a pattern of mine where I've had people treat me lesser than, or betrayed me, or hurt me, or thoughtlessly treated me. Wow. So now what I've done is I've learned that I can talk about my patterns, and I want to forgive myself for my patterns. See, I can still talk about that, you know, that jerk that's hurt me, you know, whatever. But I'm also going, I also have something here. Right. Because the truth is, if I have a pattern, and by default, by logic, if I have a pattern that keeps coming into my life and I heal that pattern, it would then likely not continue to recur.
Right.
So if I don't heal it and it's recurring, I'm technically calling it into my life so that I can eventually see the pattern and release it. So in that sense, I'm not justifying hurtful things that people do to me or to others, but I am willing to say, well, wait, besides what they did, why am I experiencing that? You know, if so-and-so did such and such to me, there are 7 billion people on the planet. How come they're in my life? And I can look at my pattern, because it's likely that if I can uproot my pattern, this thing wouldn't happen anymore. So that's the one of the main bridges to understanding this is to get to an understanding of responsibility. What it means is not, I'm going to take on blame, because that's the thing that people look at. They start to think this is going to be blame on me if I take responsibility. It's not. It just means what part do I play, and what can I learn from this? And summarizing that from another angle is, forgiveness does not mean really approving of or condoning the behavior of hurtful people, as much as it means I'm going to go ahead and release the effects it has on me, or what power it seemed to have had on me. And that is my responsibility, meaning I have the right and the power to be able to do that.
Exactly. And when we don't do that, we end up internalizing all of that hurt. It builds up either in our field or inside our body, and it potentially can make us sick, and who wants that? So, really you're talking now more about accountability and responsibility, which is the bottom line, I think, for those of us in today's world that are trying to move into higher levels of consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely. The accountability, there are words that, like a responsibility, accountability, there are words like that it really upsets a lot of people, because our programming around those words means be accountable, be responsible, like it's your fault. That's the programming we have. So it's really amazing that our ego has created this minefield, with explosives, this minefield around the world, around the word responsibility, so that nobody wants to go there, But all you have to do is see through it, see it for what it is.
Right.
Responsibility really then suddenly becomes an empowering word, like I get to change this pattern, not fine, it was my fault. It's like, heck with that. I get to change this pattern by just stepping up and seeing the truth of what's happening here.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people are very invested in victim mentality, and so they're getting a payoff for not forgiving someone. And so when you start talking about accountability and responsibility, well, you can't be accountable and responsible and still be a victim. So you have to begin to realize the illusion of that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, how does love play into this one? Because you call this book the Book of Love and Forgiveness.
Yeah. Love plays into it because there's this progression or digression, depending on how you want to look at it. But the bottom line is, the only reason we need forgiveness in our lives is because we have forgotten the first principle, love. As the Torah says, as the Bible says, as many thought systems in this world have said, God is the Alpha and Omega. God is the beginning and the ending. And it partly means that in the beginning there's God, and God is love. We sort of have to practice or allow ourselves to imagine God being more like a feeling than a person. God is the presence of the feeling of love or bliss or joy. So it's a consciousness. They say in the Bible, the kingdom of heaven, and make reference about the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven means the consciousness of heaven. Mm-hmm. And heaven is God, not where God lives. Heaven is God. So kingdom of heaven means the consciousness of God. So when we say you're going to inherit the kingdom of heaven, it means you're going to inherit the consciousness of God. Now, why would we inherit it? Because actually we were given that consciousness. So in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and so on and so on. So whatever God is, we too are that thing. So God made us in its image, according to scriptures. And its image is not a physical likeness, it's a consciousness. Like I said, God is a consciousness. So that means God is love. God is the consciousness of love. We're made in God's image, so we are the consciousness of love. Does it seem like it? Does it feel like it? Why would we have to celebrate Memorial Day if everybody knew who they were? That's the problem. Like Buddha said, ignorance of who we are is what causes everything else as a problem on earth. So retracting that and saying it differently is, there's God, and God is love. We're made in God's image, so we too are love. So that's the first principle, is God is and we are, and so it is. So that's love. Children of God forgot that they were love and started imagining, make-believing that they were something else. In other words, we forgot that we're love, and therefore we now have judgment. So there's love and then there's judgment. Judgment that we are not love. And because we judge that we are not love, we then end up needing forgiveness, which restores us back to love. So forgiveness is an act of love when in between the two you have this block called judgment. So it's kind of amazing, but love is what we are. We've forgotten that we're love. So we need to practice forgiveness, and it restores us back to love. So God again becomes the beginning and the end of the whole story. We look like we're once upon a time, there was love, bliss, Eden, oneness with God. And then we dropped into a world like we have here, where we've forgotten, and all the hatred and all the fear and all the anger and all the attacking one another. That's a world that expresses judgment, clearly proving that we are not remembering that we are the love of God. So love is who we are. Forgiveness is what love does when you have a problem. Forgiveness is what love does when you have judgment. Forgiveness will not always be necessary. Forgiveness is only necessary when you have judgment. As we learn to let go of judgment, forgiveness and judgment both will dissipate, and you'll see that there's only really one thing. What was it? It was love. Love was always there, but we forgot, had to forgive ourselves for forgetting. I sort of say, those two opposite words, forgetting and forgiving. So people that forget tend to think that life is forgetting. It's forgetting stuff, taking from others, whether it's their lives or their love, or false love, like human love, or their whatever else that we think that they have, getting their approval. That's all forgetting, which is the opposite of forgiving. Forgiving is when we give love, when we give love in return for hatred or hurt. I'm not saying we're supposed to be pushovers or doormats. I'm just saying that, ultimately our goal is to give and not get or take. And some people say, well, no, I've been giving all my life. It's my turn now to receive. I didn't say receive is not the word I use. It's getting, right, which is different. Receiving can be a gift of people, a gift of the universe, whatever. Getting means I'm taking. Usually, even if it looks like I'm getting it from you, I am also still taking it. But a lot of people, their faces wet with tears of all the injustices of the world. I've been giving, I'm always so loving. I can't believe the world returns and it treats me the way it does. It doesn't help us to paint that picture, even though it looks justified. Like I've only ever been loving and people have only ever been hurtful to me. Again, we'll never know why that is if we don't know how to look within and see what's happening and why it's happening. And it's very important for us to be able to do that. I mean, we may not like it, but you claim that you want to know why your life is the way it is despite your loving behavior. How are we going to do that if we don't go inside your soul to find out? So we have some responsible roles to play. But before, I'll say one last thing on that. One of the forgiveness exercises, the very first one in the book, is as follows, and it's and for your listeners and viewers, no matter who you think you want to forgive, whether you sit there and juggle and try to analyze, can I do it, and I can't do it, and it's too hard, get out of all that thinking for just a second. Everyone is capable of forgiving. All we need is to know simple enough techniques to make it right for our heart. So let's do it this way. If anybody were thinking of anyone that has committed anything to you, whether it's a minor or major, just do this. If you can just say, fine, you can say they've done something, you don't like their behavior, you can, anything about it, you can call them the most gross names if you want. Do that and get it out. Instead of pretending we're all holy and we don't speak like that, just get it out. There's this blankety blank, fine, that's okay. But add to that. But no matter whatever they were, how rude they were, how mean, how selfish, say it, get it out. And then say, but I refuse to hate them. Start with, I refuse to hate them. Because if you don't refuse to hate them, then actually you're still hooked by them. And how does that feel? So try, I refuse to hate them. Breathe with that for a second. See, they don't have power over you. You are refusing, and you're refusing to hate them. Hate is a very intense thing. Do you really want to hate them? No, but I don't agree with what they did. That's fine. I didn't say you had to agree. I just said refuse to hate them. Step 1 of 3. It's only 3 steps. 2, whether they did something that you agree with or not, whether you think that you play a part or are responsible, don't worry about that. That's too heavy right now. Refuse to hate them. But number 2 is do your best to acknowledge that you can learn something from it. And you can. We can always learn something from it. So what can I learn from this? See, now, if we told you that it was your responsibility and that you had some secret lesson there, that's going to be too hard for some of us to hear. So don't worry about that. Instead, choose to learn something from it, whatever it was. And I don't mean like an obvious, like, well, if several people have hurt me and betrayed me, here's what I learned. Never trust men again. Never trust women again. Well, that's not the highest lesson you could really learn. I don't mean just the obvious things like that. You know, all men are bad, all women are bad. That's not what I mean by a lesson. I'm asking more like, try to learn the deepest lesson you can. Go a little deeper than absolutes. So for example, if it's been males or females and they've betrayed me 10 times, 5 times, whatever, the lesson doesn't mean never trust one and never have a relationship again. The lesson could be this. Maybe I could pace myself in my relationships more. I have this tendency to rush in. And maybe that's why I haven't seen this sort of thing coming. Maybe I moved too fast. So one lesson I can learn, and I said one because there could be many. One lesson I learned is I'm going to start pacing myself. Another lesson could be, I think I need to fast from relationships for a while. I keep going right into the next one. Maybe I need to take a break. That's what I mean by lessons. A healthy conclusion, a healthy insight. 1, I refuse to hate him. 2, what can I learn from this? 3, you don't have to, love the person per se. You don't have to call them on their birthdays anymore. You don't have to do anything. I'm asking just the third thing is, do your best to affirm that there is a light in that person somewhere, made in God's image. Now, this is important. It's not easy to do. How is it going to be easy for us to say, oh, yeah, okay, great, Michael, thanks for that one. Adolf Hitler has a light. Yeah, he's just a beautiful being. I didn't say that. The being he showed us is not beautiful. And when people tell us, oh, you have to love everyone, those people don't even know what they're saying. So don't believe them. What it means when we say you have to love everyone, anybody who tells you that should not be implying that you're supposed to love hurtful people or hurtful behaviors. That's not what they mean or should mean. When we say you have to love everyone, it means love the part of them you can't see, the light in them. Don't love their behaviors. Don't love molestation. Don't love rape. Don't love war. And people say, yeah, you have to love it. They don't even know what they're saying. They just say it because they saw it on a bumper sticker somewhere, The truth is, we're not asked to love anything but love, because only love exists. Only love is real. God is love and only God is real. So only love is real. So why would God or anyone with half a sense of God tell you to love something that's not there, something that's not real? Hate is not real. It's a manufactured human belief system. So it would be inappropriate for us to say you need to love hate or hateful behaviors. No, we're only needing to come to the place where we can say, despite the way this person behaved or this nation behaved or whatever it is, or I behaved or allowed people to treat me, because I have to forgive myself, right? But besides all that, deep down in every one of us, including myself, when I've allowed the worst things to happen to me, deep down, there was a part of me that's untouched by all of that. I could have been raped 5 times, but the spirit in me can't even be touched, let alone raped. That happened to my human self. I will refuse to hate those people. I will look at what I might learn in some way from it, but I will affirm that in myself, as well as in the other people involved, there is a light that cannot be touched by any of that. And I'm so grateful for that. And that is what I'm asking people to learn, to love the light, to affirm that there's even a light there. So refuse to hate, learn what you can, from whatever experience. But then affirm that somewhere unbeknownst to us, there is a light made in God's image in that person, whoever the person is of your focus in the moment. There's a light in them. Now, again, I'm not saying the person, their behavior is light or that that's the nice part. I'm just saying, even if it's abstract, somewhere out there, Dad, Mom, you passed away, you were cruel, but I'm affirming that despite the way you treated me, somewhere in you there was a light made in God's image. I can even add, I didn't get to see that light. I can even add, you guys didn't see that light in yourselves. You can add that because it's true that they were not coming from their light. If I've harmed you, it's clearly not coming from my God self. And so, as example, in the popular Ho'oponopono prayer of the Hawaiian people that originated as a concept for the ancient Lemurians, but the Hawaiian people, the prayer is along the lines of saying, I'm just very much paraphrasing it right now, but it's like saying, I'm sorry that what I saw in you was not your light. Please forgive me. But I do love you because in you there is a light. And I forgot that. So thank you. Thank you for helping me be reminded that I need to look beyond the hurtful you, the hurtful behaviors of the hurtful you. And so it is. Thank you. And let that go.
Absolutely.
So in a sense, that just if they only get that, anybody can do that. Unless you absolutely are committed to hatred, anybody can get that. It's, I refuse to hate you. I will learn what I can from this. And I affirm that somewhere in you, there is a light made in God's image. And I release you to find that light. That's all.
By doing that, you really move yourself into a place where you can go into gratitude, which is, in my opinion, that's what always seals the deal. If you can get to gratitude, then you got that head nod. You got that, whatever it takes. Yes. So it's an amazing book. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for sending it to me. And I highly recommend this book to everyone who is watching and listening today. And I really appreciate your time, Michael. Thank you, for all you do in this world to make this a better place. I honor you. Thank you.
Blessings to you.
And viewers and listeners, thank you for being patient with me while I was in France for the last 2 weeks. I had a blast. I'm glad to be back. A little bit jet lagged because I didn't get back until last night, but I'm back on, and I will see you guys again this time next week. And I'll have another great guest for you. So until then, remember, people who take responsibility for their lives create the reality they desire. Ciao.
Peace.